Hi, and welcome to the Art of Film Funding. I'm your co-host, Claire Papan, along with writer-producer Carol Dean, author of the best-selling book, The Art of Film Funding, and host of this show. Carol is the president of From the Heart Productions, a nonprofit organization that has supported filmmakers with the Roy W. Dean Grant, fiscal sponsorship, education, and resources for over 30 years. Carol also teaches the Learn Producing class. Each class features an industry expert guest instructor and is designed to give the information, guidance, and support to become a successful producer. You can learn more about this class and all of From the Heart Productions offerings at FromTheHeartProductions.com. Today we are joined by our guest host, filmmaker Heather Lenz, best known for directing and producing the Sundance documentary Kusama Infinity. Our special guest this week is Lisa D'Appolito, an Emmy-nominated producer and director who is also a dual citizen of the United States and Italy. She started as an actress in film, theater, and television, and her roles included a part in Goodfellas. She went on to producing and directing in advertising. Lisa's documentary, Love, Gilda, was nominated for 2 Creative Emmys. Lisa was named one of Variety's 10 documentarians to watch in 2018 and Shoot Magazine's New Directors Showcase in 2019. Her recent films include Albert Pyun, King of Cult Movies, which premiered at Comic-Con, and Shari and Lamb Chop, which is being theatrically released in 2025. Currently, Lisa is working on a documentary about singer-songwriter Laura Nyro.
Well, thank you so much, Claire, for the introduction. And thank you, Lisa, for taking time out of your schedule to join us today. For anyone not familiar with your new film, Shari and Lamb Chop, could you please describe it in your own words?
Shari and Lamb Chop is about Shari Lewis, who was a children's television performer in the 60s, and then she was very famous again with a new show in the 90s. And Lamb Chop is her sidekick puppet, who's a cute little lamb.
Yeah, and she's a ventriloquist. The film, I have to say, it kind of reminded me of sort of a combination of Mr. Rogers, because of the children's show part, and then the Being Elmo film, but the woman behind the men, I guess, in the beginning. So, how did you first learn about Shari Lewis, and what motivated you to make a film about her?
Well, I knew I wasn't watching her in her early shows in the 60s, and I wasn't watching her shows in the 90s, but I had known about her from, like, she was on Hollywood Squares and she was always on television with Lamb Chop doing something. But I really remembered Lamb Chop and loved Lamb Chop for some reason. And so a friend of mine met Shari's daughter at a fundraising event, and he's has a production company, and he knew I was looking for like an unsung hero and a female unsung hero. And he asked me if I would be interested in Shari and Lamb Chop. And I said yes without really thinking about it. But then I started, because I love Lamb Chop, and then I started researching Shari, and I found out how amazingly talented she was. And I was pretty shocked about like her career and the longevity of it.
Yeah, she certainly was quite a trailblazer. Can you talk a little bit about the process of sorting through just what must have just been a ton of archival footage to find the perfect clips to tell her story?
Well, I love archival. That's my favorite part of filmmaking, is going through the past and looking at what you have and actually collecting it from people. So that was, we had David Copperfield, the magician, had Shari's archives in his warehouse. So we were able to get access to the stuff that he had, which was mostly every show she's ever made. A lot of stuff, nothing like home movies or anything personal like that, but a treasure trove of her work and some interviews that we'd never seen before. And then I kind of went on a mission through friends and family to find the personal home movies. But it was really when we got to the edit with my amazing editor, Andrea Lewis, who really helped construct the story through the archival. And that's why editors are so amazing. And Andrea started seeing in Shari's work how she really used her puppets to say things that she normally wouldn't say in her life. And so that started to be the archive that we started looking for. We started looking for examples where we saw Shari using the puppets to say things. Like there's a scene where she's having a hard time with her husband at the time. And at that time, she goes on a television show with Hush Puppy and starts talking about divorce and relationships. So we knew that that was that's nothing that her puppets would ever talk about. So that's something that we know she was talking to her husband in the audience about. So that was kind of our archival had kind of a mission to both show those examples and also the examples of Shari's philosophy towards children and towards people of really believing in yourself and being the best that you can be. So that was sort of, we had messages that we were looking for.
Yeah, I think you did a great job. And just curious, I mean, Lewis is a pretty popular name, but I noticed the editor's last name is Lewis, just like the subject of the film. Is there any connection there?
No connection whatsoever.
I see. And I've heard many documentary filmmakers say that they get pushback from potential funders when they pitch documentaries about someone who's no longer with us. And so I'm wondering if that's something you experienced, and if so, how did you overcome it and fund the film?
Well, I think what we had an initial investor who helped us do a little shooting and we put together a sizzle and the sizzle was pretty strong. So, and this was in 2000, maybe 19, where there was more funding for documentaries at that point. So we pitched it and several different people came on board. So it was easy for some reason to get funding for this film. What wasn't easy was to get distribution for this film. So that's where the challenge was.
I see. Well, it's rare to hear someone say it's easy to get funding, so it's nice that that part worked out. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah,
uh,
no, not in general. That was just with this project. I,
yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah. And so during the making of the film, was there anything you wished you could have asked Sherry that you weren't quite able to find in the archival?
um, just more about, I mean, I was always into the personal Sherry, which was very, very difficult to unveil because she was very guarded in her real life. So I guess I would have asked her more about her challenges with what it was like those years between her shows and how she kept going because she did keep going and inventing herself. And I guess I would have asked her, was there ever a time that she wanted to give up?
And how long did it take to make this film?
Well, COVID hit, so that kind of was a damper in shooting. So it took about maybe three years, I would say, 3 to 4 years.
And previously, you directed Love Gilda, which was also about a female trailblazer. And for anyone who hasn't seen that film, could you tell us a little bit about what it's about?
It's about the Gilda Radner, who was in the original cast of Saturday Night Live, and she was a very inspiring both comedian and as an inspiration to people living with cancer.
And how did you get interested in Gilda as a topic?
Well, I was working in advertising and somebody came to my boss because they needed to do some pro bono free videos for Gilda's Club, which was a place for people with cancer in New York City, which was founded by Gene Wilder after Gilda had passed away. So I volunteered and I started just filming these videos of the members of Gilda's Club where they would talk about Gilda. I mean, they would talk about the cancer, but Gilda was a shining light and an inspiration. And the clubhouse was filled with photos of Gilda, and her presence was really there. So originally, the film was meant to be a film about Gilda's club, and then it just sort of became more and more Gilda. But it was an independent project, so that was a totally different path that that film took.
Hmm. And Love Gilda was the first documentary feature that you directed. What did you learn from making that film that's helped you with your more recent work?
Well, when I came from advertising, there was always a budget. So I guess what I really learned is how to maximize the money that you have and make it go as far as possible. So that was, I mean, there was a lot of learnings. There was learning about working with a composer on an original score. I had worked with music houses and composers before, but on very short material, like commercials and um branded content that was maybe at the most 30 minutes. So I learned about working with what it's like to work with a composer and how important it is to have music that supports the emotion of the film. So that was a learning, but there's a lot of learning. Archival, how to organize your archives, because that's a really big project in itself.
And you mentioned that Love Gilda was an indie film. Ultimately, how was the film funded?
Well, it was originally like self-funded in the sense that I would work like freelance, and then I would use the money to shoot a little, then I would go back to freelance and I would shoot a little. And then I did an Indiegogo campaign where I raised some money. And then I had some donations uh from the Radner family to help with that. And then once the film was everything was shot, I always did labs and I always did pitch events. So I had another situation where I had a really good trailer, and I had at this point I had uh some famous comedians, or all the famous comedians that are in the film, in the trailer. So I got into the deal maker program at Hot Docs, and I was able to meet different distributors. And then I met with CNN, and they came on board to with the funding to do the editing of the film and do all the finishing. So that's kind of the process of that, is that I got it to a point, and then when the I needed I was able to show people what I had, and get it to the next level. But I always did any kind of pitch that I could get into.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that it worked out that way. How long did it take to make the Gilda film?
That was about 6 years.
And as mentioned earlier, you recently finished a documentary about Albert Pyun. And for anyone who isn't familiar with Albert, could you please tell us who he was?
Albert was the Ed Wood. I mean, you can consider him the Ed Wood of Hawaii. He was a director, a B movie director who just had a real passion for filmmaking, and he has a great cult following. He did these post-apocalyptic films, and he did a lot of film with famous people like Jean-Claude Van Damme. He started his career. He was just you're kind of the essence of a do-it-yourself filmmaker, trying to make a film on whatever money he had.
One of the things I really loved about this film was the story about how the producers removed him from the edit of one of his films, and he was forced to shoot new pickup shots that he didn't really agree with. And so while he was on location with the actors, he shot his own movie, a different movie that he had creative control of, using the same actors at the same locations. I mean, I love that story so much. And I wonder, do you have any favorite parts of the story or anything about his life that really stood out to you?
Well, Albert would do anything to make a movie, and he was always even though he made these movies that he has one of the worst Rotten Tomato ratings of all time, he really approached everything as if it was a Godard or Fellini film. Like, he really put his heart and soul into the movies. But I think what struck me about Albert is when I started filming him, he was pretty sick. He had dementia, though he had pretty good long-term memory, and he was mostly bedridden. But he would still get out and go on location and shoot something. And that was kind of, I was really inspired by that, his passion for filmmaking.
Well, I must say, hearing you talk about, your first film, which is a common thing that there's no money and people are self-funding things and you're trying to stretch every dollar. It seems very similar to what he was dealing with financially with his films as well. Did you feel an affinity with him in that regard?
Oh, definitely. But Albert always wanted to do things his way. So his first movie made like $45 million. And he could have gone the Hollywood path. Like he was supposed to, he did a Captain America. He was supposed to do a Spider-Man movie. Like he could have gone that path, but Albert was never going to sell out his creative. And so I guess I always loved the fact that Albert would always stick to what he believed in, whether it was good or bad, it was still his opinion. But the idea of just, I mean, I guess it's something that any filmmaker, independent filmmaker will understand is like once you get excited about a film, like you're going to do everything you can to try to make that film happen. Like whether you do make it or not, it's just it gets hold of you and you just want to make that film or you just keep going. So that was kind of what I felt about Albert, and we had a lot of conversations about the industry and things like that.
And this film premiered at Comic-Con. Could you talk a little bit about how audiences there reacted to the film?
Actually, I wasn't there, so I don't know how they reacted. It's played in different places in the around the world in genre festivals. It's played in Sitges, it's played in Korea, it's played in Brazil. Um, Most of the people who have seen it are Albert fans, and I think that they were not expecting to have such an emotional film, and I think they were not expecting to uh, because Albert has a sort of his fan base is a lot of filmmakers, indie filmmakers themselves who are into horror and genre film, and I don't think they were expecting to have a film that would make them cry or be emotional. So that was
Yeah.
one of the that was one of the responses that I really loved.
Yeah. And I'm curious, he's an early Asian American filmmaker. Is there anything about that background that attracted a different audience, or does he have a strong audience, Asian background audience?
He has a pretty general audience. He has a very strong Hawaiian background because he's Hawaiian. He's half Korean and half Japanese. So he has a really big Hawaiian audience. I don't know his demographics, but most of his demographics seem to be men, more male dominating audience, it seems like to me.
Hmm. I could see that in a way, although I must say I was impressed to hear how much he liked these strong female characters too, like physically strong, like bodybuilding women and so forth, who were in some of his films. Um, so, uh, Currently you're working on a film about Laura Nyro, and I'm wondering what attracts you to biographical documentaries, since clearly this is the kind of work you've been making.
Well, I guess I love I mean, I used to be an actress, so I'm very um this is a way for me to really, I don't know, explore the character development, if that makes sense. So I just really love amazingly talented people because there's so many talented people, there's but very few geniuses. And I think that Laura is up there with Gilda and Shari and Albert as a genius. So something that I think all of them are one of a kind. Like I don't think there'll ever be another I don't know if there could be another Shari Lewis because she was just uh her background and the making of who she was and the development. I don't know if there'll ever be another Shari Lewis. And so I guess that's what I'm really drawn to is I love these really talented people, and I'm always really impressed by their sheer genius.
And for anyone who's not familiar with Laura, could you please just tell us a little bit about who she is and how far along are you in the making of this film?
Laura Nyro was really famous in the late 60s, early 70s. And she was really more famous as a songwriter than as a singer. At one point, she had three #1 hits as a songwriter in Billboard on the Billboard charts. And then she was able to sell her. She was David Geffen's first client, and he was able to sell her library. So so she was able to walk away from the music business in a sense, and just kind of live the rest of her life doing music that she wanted to do her way. So she's not a well-known person, but in the music population, singer-songwriters have been just like go crazy over Laura. So this is another, not self-funded, but this is sort of another film that is, uh, I would say it's in development. Like we have some seed money, and with that seed money, I've been able to film some really famous people who love her. Like I filmed Elton John and Brandy Carlisle and Barry Manilow and Clive Davis and who else? Alice Cooper and Patti LaBelle, who was her friend. So I've kind of doing a kind of different path now, is just trying to get um and then we have a little more funding to do her friends and family. So I'm hoping to get, so this is kind of, I'm not sure really sure where we're at. We're kind of in trying to figure out, I mean, I have a pretty clear idea of what the story is, but how we get the funding, I'm not sure how that's going to happen.
That's often the challenge, isn't it? And what advice would you give to first-time filmmakers who want to make a biographical documentary?
Well, I mean, money is the most challenging part, right? But if you're able to, one thing that I'm not able to do is film and edit. So if you have that skill set to be able to shoot things yourself and edit them yourself, that really is you're at such you're at such an advantage to other filmmakers who are trying to raise money to have other people film things and edit for them. So that would, if I could go back in time, I would really learn how to shoot and how to edit and be much more self-sufficient than I am.
Well, that is certainly good advice. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about where audiences can currently see your films. And you did mention, since we have a little time here, you did mention that the distribution on your recent film about Shari Lewis has been challenging. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit, about that process of getting that film out into the world, how that has happened and how it's, going to be happening in the months ahead.
Well, it premiered 2 years ago at Doc NYC. So it's taken now, we were very lucky and we have Kino Lober as our distributor. And we're doing our theatrical release right now, and it's doing really well. It's the film has been holding over in cities. It's been expanding to more and more theaters, which is great. So I think there was the challenge with distribution was, well, no one really knows who Shari is. It's not a serious film. It's not, it's so there was a challenge getting distribution for a while. And so I think, but I kept the film going by basically Jewish film festivals, loved the film, and we would play all the time, and the film would sell out. So I knew that there was an audience for this film. So there's people who really enjoyed the film. So I think um, just by keeping the film out there, it kept it alive until the right distributor or the right time came in.
Well, that's, I think, great advice for people who find themselves in that situation where they, screened at had premiered at a festival and didn't instantly get a distributor. And if I understand correctly, streaming is on the horizon after the theatrical. Could you talk about that as well?
Now, I'm not sure of the exact date, but the next after this theatrical run, Kino Lorber is going to have it, um, on, I guess it's called paid, paid advertising, like it'll be on Amazon, it'll be available on Amazon to buy and rent and on iTunes and every other distribution where you can rent and buy it. And it'll be available on DVDs and then hopefully it'll be through another streamer after that.
Great. And what about, do you know where Love Gilda is streaming these days?
Yeah, Love Gilda was on Hulu for a while, but now it's actually free. You can watch it for free on YouTube and I think Tubi. So it's available out there in the world to watch for free or
Oh,
with
wow.
ads.
And
With
just curious, as a filmmaker, how does that work for you having it free on YouTube? Do you get any kind of revenue from that?
well, Magnolia is the distributor, so it's a complicated. I'm not really sure how that worked
Hmm,
with you because the film has been out there for a while. So it
right.
was it was on Hulu and it was on like I think Amazon. You could pay for to rent it, and now I'm not sure how what happens when it goes to the level of free.
Yeah, I see. And the film about Albert, I know you just recently finished it, but how's that one making its way into the world? Could you talk about that as well?
That is, the producer is out there trying to get distribution and trying to make things happen. So for now, it's been playing, it's actually pretty interesting because it plays along with Albert's film. It's not a full feature, it's 55 minutes. So it'll screen along with one of his films at one of these genre festivals. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah, and I guess until recently, that's a kind of length that would have been very favorable for PBS, but sadly we know that PBS is going away. So that's unfortunate, but hopefully it will, continue to be seen. I just watched it and I really enjoyed it. For anyone who's interested in following your career, can you please share your social media handles, your website, any other social media handles you want to share for your movies?
I'm actually not on that much social media. I mean, I'm kind of old school and kind of stick to Facebook to promote my films. So my personal is Three Faces Films, which is my company. And then I have Love Gilda Facebook and Instagram page, which has turned into really more of a fan page for Gilda, which is fun. And then there's a Sherry and Lamb Chop page also.
And is there anything I didn't ask you today that you would like to share with our audiences?
Um, just it's so, as everybody, your audience probably knows, I mean, it's so amazing when people finish films. And I guess I'm very lucky to have finished these films, and I have so many amazing filmmaker friends who have done great work that they're struggling to get out there in the world. And eventually, I think eventually things come out. There's new mediums and there's new ways to do things. So I think if you stick with it, then it could be very disillusioning. And I think expectations, like I've lowered my expectations, because I think everybody wants to do a film that's going to go to Sundance and then, make a get it this big deal. And I think I've lowered my expectations in a way that I just want to have the work be seen and enjoyed.
Well, I guess it helps to lower your expectations, although at the same time you have bills to pay like everyone else, so it is challenging. And I do wonder if you don't mind me asking, like, are there any particular challenges that you've overcome in film that you're able to discuss that you at the time maybe you didn't see how you were going to do it, but you managed to overcome anything that might again inspire other filmmakers who are struggling to get their work made and seen and financed and all that good stuff?
I think it's always a struggle to how you're going to tell the story with the material, like in an archival film like this, like you have ideas, but if you don't have the archive to support it, it's hard to tell the story. So, I think that it's always a challenge, and always to have a great editor is probably the key to an archival film like this. I would say, um, but truthfully, the biggest challenge is always financing. But and I think there's always a point when you're in the edit where nothing is working, and you just kind of go through that process and come out the other end.
Yeah, well, certainly with documentary, the ways to edit these films are just infinite. So it does take a certain amount of, trying different things to see what you think is the best solution. So, um, well, thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us today. We really appreciate it and looking forward to seeing your next film and, hoping the Albert film gets out there as well. And yeah, just thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and it's great to be able to talk about filmmaking.
Well, thank you. And thanks everyone for listening.
Now, in its second edition, Carol Dean's popular book, The Art of Film Funding, has 12 new chapters to cover all areas of film financing and how to avoid expensive pitfalls. Learn how to start with an idea and end with a trailer, how to make an ask for money, create your story structure and your trailer, legal advice, fair use, successful crowdfunding, how to ask for music rights, and what insurance you can't shoot without. Available on Amazon under Carol Dean and at FromTheHeartProductions.com. I want to remind our listeners that David Raiklin is a brilliant and talented award-winning musician who scores films and can compose music for a trio or for a full orchestra. David is a very good friend to the independent filmmaker and comes highly recommended by From the Heart Productions. If you need music to help tell your story, please contact him at davidraiklin.com. That's David, RAIKLEN.com. And Carol and I want to thank you for tuning in to The Art of Film Funding. Please visit our website at FromTheHeartProductions.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. Good luck with your films, everyone.